Why do you think so many recent blockbusters have been criticized for bad CGI? People being overworked, too many movies coming out due to COVID delays? So, over the last several years, a bunch of these like $200 million blockbusters from the biggest studios have put out movies where there's just a lot of really questionable CGI. Really spotty effects where you see it and you go, what? I some of that I think is that we're now at a point in time where CGI is 30 years old. It's older than a bunch of you. So you kind of high expectations of what you're going to get from some of these movies. But the real issue is when a movie costs $200 million, you just go, there's just no excuse for why that looks so bad or off. And in particular, I think what a lot of us have been, since we've been annoyed or just like, why do these movies not look good? The thing that's popped out to a bunch of us, especially over this last year, we've rewatched some movies from 10, 15 years ago and been like, 15 years ago, CGI looked much better than it looks today. So what's going on here? And then there's all these headlines about Disney overworking their VFX houses, underpaying them, making them work insane hours. So what exactly is kind of my best guess is what's going on here? I think there's several different kind of things going on. I think one of the big ones is that there's been a massive ramp up in the amount of high level CGI that's being demanded because of streaming. There's just as many blockbusters coming out in theaters, just as many big spectacle films hitting theaters as ever. But you also have Netflix, Max, Amazon putting out their own big blockbuster films. So more of these big films are coming out than ever before. But the other huge important piece to this is that there's just this massive rise of premium streaming TV shows, where you're doing $200 million TV shows for Disney Plus. So Disney is putting out as many blockbusters as they've ever put out, plus trying to fill up a streaming service. But the fact that you have a bunch of money to pay for stuff doesn't change the fact that there's only so much time and there's only so many different VFX artists. You stop and think about it. Like, I know Photoshop. I can do some visual effects. There's a lot of people that can do it at the level that I can. But you look at like what they create in movies now. The gap between normal person ability with the visual graphic editing and what they're doing in blockbusters now. There's a huge gap there, and there's only so many people that are at that talent level. But we're dramatically increasing the output. So, a handful of artists being stretched very thin and only having so much time to work on each of these projects. So that's, I think, part of it is that. There's just too much premium level effects being demanded. You know, we had the Flash on CW 10 years ago, but Flash VFX is not the same thing as Disney Plus $200 million VFX for Marvel shows or Rings of Power. Such a, like, different categories. The other one, and I think this is a big part of it, is that 30 years ago when James Cameron did Terminator 2, when Steven Spielberg did Jurassic Park, they were nervous about CGI. Like, will people buy into this? They were scared of the technology. And that was kind of the aesthetic for a long time of yet a whole generation of directors that are like, I want to use the latest tools, but I need to make sure that it still looks like it's in a believable reality. And so then they would seamlessly cut back and forth between practical, CGI. They would use light. They would choose which one works best with a practical prop in close-up, and then broad, you go to CGI. And just very much, let's shoot an actual location, then put digital elements into it. And more and more and more, especially, I think Marvel's one of the worst examples of this, is it's just, and as well as Disney Plus Star Wars, it's so much digital environments where you have people on green screens entirely in CGI. And to use a fancy word that Robert Meyer Burnett loves, that Richard Donner believed in extensively with his Superman movie, verisimilitude, just believability of what you're seeing. Does it feel like a believable reality, or just watching something that just, it always feels kind of off, or it feels too small, or it feels confined, or there's just a gap between a living person and a space that doesn't, it's clearly not right. Disney has a lot of that. It just feels digital. It feels phony. And so therefore, you have all these creators that are no longer afraid of CGI. They're not nervous that people will buy into it. They assume people will buy into it no matter what, because we're just so far into it. We have a generation of you guys that have been raised on CGI, extensive green screen, and they just assume people will be okay with it, and so they're not being careful with it. Third reason on here, and this one is in particular ties to Disney, all sorts of reports coming out in many different fashions. A big part of the problem with Disney is that they constantly are reworking things. They're constantly changing things. So infamously, Doctor Strange 3 had, or just Doctor Strange 2 had 33 rewrites or 32 rewrites or something like that, constantly shuffling it. Infamously, that they reshot the ending of Quantumania a month before the movie came out. Infamously, David Harbour said while promoting Gran Turismo that they totally reworked the third act of Black Widow while they were filming it.
The interesting thing about Marvel that's so great about them is they do rework stuff, even big productions. Like Black Widow, the entire third act was reworked as we were shooting.
That's what they keep doing. And then VFX artists are starting to leak that they'll ask for like 9 different iterations of something. And so they'll nearly complete something and say, no, we changed it, it's this now. And so then they do it totally different. And so instead of getting this long developed initial concept done properly, shot on a practical set, you have this version that's the 9th totally different version in rough draft form that had to be shot in reshoots on a green screen. This is why you watch some of these shots, you're like, I don't understand. They had so much money, so much time to get this right. Why does it look so wrong? Because they kept doing different iterations, changing it up, and didn't stick to one idea. Now, if you stick to a clear idea from the beginning, you can also build a set and shoot on a practical location, not on a green screen. You're more limited on what you can do if you go to a practical set rather than a digital environment, but it looks real. And you can contrast a bunch of the stuff that you see in like Kenobi, Mandalorian versus Andor. Andor looks like you're looking at a real place. And there's a bunch of shots in Mandalorian and Kenobi where they're using that screen technology that just makes everything feel small and just slightly off. Once they started trying to expand it and use it too much, it just looked off and made it feel smaller than it should, rather than Andor that just feels like these big, gigantic space cities. But I think it's those 3 things. There's just too much coming out. The creators are no longer afraid, and they're just overly reliant on it and not realizing the benefit of blending practical and digital. And then the third one, especially with Disney, they just keep reworking everything way, way, way too much. Most of these clips are pulled from my Patreon live streams. I do about 6 live streams every single month. For $2 per month, $20 per year, you can get access to all the exclusive videos and live streams. For $5 per month, you get your name on my end card. At the top tier, you get a 30-minute video chat with me each month. The link down below in the description has more information.